Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield News anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us is University of Missouri livestock analyst Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
All right, as we take a look at the markets this week, let's talk a little bit about what we saw on the livestock side of things.
Yeah, when you look at cash hogs for the week, we were down $2 again this week on cash hog prices. Ended Friday at 64.16. Pork cutout value was also down for the week, down $1.61. When you look at the components of that pork cutout value, it was really bellies that were down $5 that led the decline on the pork side. On the cattle side, if you look at fed cattle prices, we were weak this week. I'd say anywhere from 1 to 5 lower on cash fed cattle prices. I will say on the future side of the ledger, however, we did see strength here late in the week on fed cattle. As I believe we're starting to see futures and cash trying to converge a little bit better than we've seen for a while. On the feeder steer side, we were steady to 4 lower for the week. Certainly heavier weight calves seem to be in better demand than lightweight calves. Choice beef cutout value was also down for the week, $6.46. When you look at the components of the choice beef cutout value, it was really loins down $16.56 that led the decline this week. So we got a little weakness on the upper end of products out of that beef carcass.
Scott, as we take a look at the livestock market as a whole, February export data came in. Any surprises as we take a look at what we saw for the month of February?
Well, so I wouldn't say we had big surprises, but it is a very nice report that we got out this week in terms of February exports. Both beef and pork exports were higher in February relative to a year ago. So we are seeing very nice strength. I will say, as we go through the year, we'll have to continue to watch whether we can maintain that strength, because if you remember, back in 2016, the first few months were not very strong for us on the export side. And as we strengthen during the year in 2016, I worry that we'll have trouble here in 2017 maintaining the pace that we've seen for the first couple of months.
As we saw that strength, that export data strengthened towards the end of 2016, it's carried over into the first 2 months of this year. As you look on the pork side of things, any markets in particular that are still hanging out as that one market, or a couple of markets that we're paying attention to and strength for demand from them?
Yeah, so I think you can continue to look to the south, both for pork and beef, for that matter. Mexico matters a lot, and as you know, we still tend to have some uncertainty about what it means to renegotiate NAFTA, but we need those markets to continue to be, or that market to continue to be strong for both beef and pork for us. We can continue to look at Asia generally as important. I think sometimes we can continue to stay focused on what's available for us in that Chinese market as we look ahead, and that could be important on the pork side as well.
As we take a look at the beef side of things, parts of Asia really play a key role in where our beef products are going. One country specifically that does not is China. As we take a look at that market, how significant would access to it be for U.S. beef producers?
Yes, I think when you look at Chinese beef, they've certainly changed their imports of beef from other countries around the world a lot in the last few years. Back in 2012, they imported 86,000 metric tons of beef. For 2016, USDA currently estimates they're going to be at about 825,000 metric tons. So just a small tenfold increase over the last 4 years, I jokingly say. It has been a strong market, and in the U.S., when you look at our exports over that same period of time, they've basically been flat at about 1.1 million metric tons. So we have not been able to participate in any of that growth. It may have given us, though, some access to other markets that, as countries were filling that Chinese demand that left open to us. So there is a positive there, but if U.S. beef were to get straight to China, it is potentially a very large issue for us.
Last year, it was more than a $2 billion market, actually pushing more towards that $3 billion market of the value of their imports. The ban that China had imposed a ban in 2003 from the BSE scare. So we've not been able to export to China since then. The ban was lifted in September. We're still getting through some of those technical issues. What has to happen technically, I guess, to get in there? What are we waiting on?
Yeah, so I think most importantly is some plant inspections to occur by the Chinese that would then allow those plants to be eligible to be shipping product into China. Much of that seems to be where we're waiting at this point, and I'm not certain how quickly that happens, but I think getting some more detail in terms of exactly that path in front of us is going to be important here in the next maybe next couple of days, as we know we have discussions going on, but more importantly, setting the stage for what does it take over the next few months to try to make sure we have plants eligible here in the U.S.
You have to wonder if that's part of the discussions going on in Florida as the Chinese president and President Trump are having discussions and meeting right now. I also wonder a little bit if U.S. beef is on the menu in Florida this weekend down there.
I would assume we might have a little U.S. beef being consumed this weekend, and you're absolutely right. We could see some information flow, and it seems to me in many ways, well, it certainly is a win for U.S. beef producers if we can start to see product flow into China. But even for the Chinese, getting more beef available, I think, is a win for them as well. So we can hope maybe we get at least more clarity in what it takes to move U.S. beef into China out of the weekend's activities.
Scott, we talk a lot about beef in that market. What about the pork side of things? How are things looking for growth potential for U.S. pork headed into that country as well?
Yes, so potentially we have a lot of possibilities on the pork side as well. I often like to remind us that, I believe 2013 or 2014, we would have talked about 50 million sows in China. Just so folks remember, we have about 6 million sows here in the U.S. today. So a much larger sow herd there in China. Half the world's pork being produced in China hasn't really changed over time. But those sow numbers have been declining of late. Some recent information we got from USDA might suggest that for 2017, we're going to be down as much as 10% again in terms of sow numbers in China. So as they reduce sow inventory, what happens to pork production? Now, I think we have some trade-offs there between reduced breeding herd inventory, but increased productivity per sow that makes pork production more stable than we might talk about from the decline in sow numbers. But for me, that's potentially an opportunity for more U.S. pork to be moving into China as well. So the Chinese market is very critical to both pork and beef as we look ahead.
While we're on the demand side of things, let's slip and talk a little bit about domestic demand. Jobs report and unemployment numbers came out this week. Are those potentially good news for domestic demand for our products here?
Well, I think we got a little bit of mixed bag out of the jobs report that we got this week. Yes, unemployment fell a couple of tenths to 4.5%. However, when you look at the jobs report, it did not meet expectations. Some have quickly dismissed that report, however, just given the timing of some of the snows in the Northeast may have affected what we saw in terms of that jobs report. So we'll have to wait and see a little bit. I guess I don't view it overly negative, but maybe not as positive in terms of jobs reports we've seen the last few months. But you're correct to remind us to be on that domestic demand side as well, because we keep having more pork and more beef coming to the marketplace this year, and it requires both stronger export demand as well as stronger domestic demand to keep producer prices from declining more than we've seen here in the last few weeks.
Scott, anything else for this week?
I think we've covered a majority of what's been important in terms of livestock news for the week.
As we look ahead to next week, it is a short week due to the Easter holiday on Sunday. What markets, futures markets are closed on Friday, correct?
I believe you're correct.
And then we also have WASDE report out on Tuesday. What are some of the things maybe we're keeping an eye out on in that report? Yeah,
so number one for WASDE, we'll get some more updates. We don't get a monthly update on the livestock side. We actually get that every 6 months, and so this will be the report where we're actually going to get more detail in terms of what's happening in the rest of the world livestock market. It'll be interesting to see what USDA says not only about China, but also what they might say about Australia, where we continue to see dry weather affecting the cattle herd in Australia. So WASI's going to be an important report, and we'll start to see some of the effects from planting intentions last week as we run through the full SNU. So WASI will be important for us as we get that data out on Tuesday.
Scott, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
That sounds great, Megan.
All right, Scott, for market updates daily, twice a day, to be exact, open and close, check out our Brownfield Market Minute with John Perkins. To submit questions, comments, visit our website, brownfieldagnews.com. You can also subscribe to have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner on Brownfield.